Hey everybody, Jeff Tidwell here with another one of my tweet videos for you today. We're going all the way back to February 2019, which isn't as far back as normal. Usually past half dozen videos I've gone back to 2018 for some older tweets, but now we're getting back into the swing of things here in the present day, which means 7 months ago. So, of course, you can find me at Real Jeff Tidwell on Twitter. I'm also on Minds, Gab, Telegram, Parler, Instagram. If you're not watching this on BitChute, you're watching it on YouTube. If you enjoy the content, please do like and subscribe. Hit the little button below for notifications, and also leave me a comment below with your thoughts and observations on the material. And of course, if you find my cadence to be a little bit on the slow side, you can hit the 2x speed button and get all of the information in half the time. Time, of course, being the currency, meaning that you're getting double bang for your buck. So definitely check that out. And without further ado, let's get into my tweets from February 2019. So, this one goes out to Democrats. And it's on the subject of reparations. To Democrats, there will be no repairing the damage done in paying reparations. Please stop creating new victims via the real victimhood of centuries past. Put down the identity politics script for half a minute and quit trying to buy votes with this backwards thinking nonsense. So, pretty strongly worded against reparations. But let me break this down, what I'm talking about. So as you probably know, when you're working towards an election, there are promises made. In fact, the President Trump, says, promises made, promises kept. And you can be the judge of how many of those promises have been kept. But of course, one of the popular points for Democrats to talk about is, of course, race relations, racial politics, or identity politics. It's part of their strategy for bringing in voters and getting them energized, of course. And on that subject, of course, reparations is something that they are often talking about. You have Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, different people have brought up the subject of reparations. So, in my view, reparations is a positive idea. So there is an altruistic element. It's designed to, on its face, help people. Okay, so you might support reparations or you might not, but of course, we can talk about that a bit more, the actual content of what reparations could be. But with Democrats, of course, they are using this as if you elect us, if you vote for us, you can get money. You can get this gift. It's sort of something that, is essentially, I hate to say this, but a bribe or a reason for people to vote for them that has a transactional or a monetary benefit. Andrew Yang has also done this with his universal basic income. He says, if you sign up here, we'll give a few lucky families $10,000 for the year. We'll do something, $1,000 a month or $10,000 a month. If you, support me, I'll give you money. I will give you direct money. So with reparations, you have the same kind of approach to bringing in voters, persuading them. It's notably those that may be, targeted to receive reparations. Now, of course, reparations are for slavery. Slavery from, the 18th, 17th, going all the way back 19th century slavery of African Americans. That's the point when you say reparations. You're not talking about any of the other slaves, any of the other indentured servants, but you're talking about a specific group. Now, this is also a group that the Democrat Party does cater to, at least in their rhetoric. Okay, results and rhetoric are two separate sides of the coin. So they will pay, they call it pandering, but they'll, of course, they believe and to some degree it's true that they hold sway with minorities in terms of ethnic minority. Of course, they also have their support for the LGBTQIA plus community as well. Now, it's not that the Republicans, don't have any people like that support them, or that they have policies that necessarily hurt them in many areas. We talk about reparations. We're trying to solve problems in the present, but their claim, of course, is that these problems happened in the distant past, and we're trying to fix it in the present. So, when you're trying to fix a current problem, but you're looking at the distant past, different people, hundreds of years ago, and then you're looking at problems in today, yes, there is sort of a butterfly effect. There's causality. Families that were impacted by things such as segregation, they definitely felt the impact of those things long after the events took place, the actual discrimination and segregation took place. One of the more common points I like to make about this is the veterans, the World War II veterans, World War I. The African American veterans, they didn't get the amount of benefits that they could have. I mean, this is one of the places, actually, that I believe that the New York Times 1619 Project is actually, a lot of it's propaganda. A lot of it's left-wing, by left-wing I mean Democrat, propaganda. But there are some truths in there. And one of them is, of course, that segregation caused problems with veterans, African American veterans that were looking for benefits after the war was over. So there are some things in the 20th and 21st century that we can look at and say, well, here is an injustice that we need to correct. So reparation for something like that would be, important. But of course, with reparations, usually there's this question that goes across, it raises more questions than it answers. It doesn't really seem to have, the common questions people have about reparations are, well, how are you going to determine who gets what? Who is going to pay for this? Who is going to be the beneficiary? Now, it's easy to go look at the cost-benefit analysis and forget the cost and say, well, what do you mean? Why are you even discussing this? Let's talk about the benefits here. Why wouldn't you want more benefits for the African American community or any marginalized community, whatever their immutable characteristics may be? Of course, we don't want to judge people by their immutable characteristics. We want to judge them by their character, their merit, and their flaws. But, we are looking at a specific injustice, slavery of African Americans. Now, it doesn't take into account that there were it was more class-based. There were a number of African Americans that owned slaves or had indentured servants. We don't need to get into that fact because people are not really talking about that when it comes to reparations. With reparations, they're just saying, look, here's a community that's been historically marginalized. We want to even the scales. And I do support the idea behind that. But once you start asking questions about it, who's going to pay? And, once we pay reparations for this, will there be other, some people say there's no such thing as a slippery slope. And it's true that inertia never goes forever. It doesn't go forever. There's always a stopping point where inertia has a counterforce and something pushes back. So it's not that if you give reparations, necessarily there will be no end to further reparations for other groups. They'll say, well, these people got it, so why can't we? But really, it's very complicated as to, who's paying, who's receiving. Are we going to look at all the records of everybody that was harmed by slavery? Now, I know, again, there is causality. The fact of the matter is that people have experienced consequences of slavery for decades, hundreds of years. It doesn't go away. If you start out 200 years ago as an oil baron or someone of high industry, and then you're comparing yourself and your family assets to somebody that, came from a family that had been enslaved, of course, there's going to be a large gap between them in terms of their wealth. It's, generational wealth is obviously a thing. So it's not that there isn't a problem. What we're looking to do, though, is we're looking to solve problems now, not problems 150 years ago. And we don't want to live in the past as well. We want to remember the past, take note of the past, never forget the past. But Kanye West said that slavery was a choice. Now, that's very provocative of him to say that. But the reason why I talk here about victims, I say, to Democrats, there will be no repairing the damage done by paying reparations. Please stop creating new victims via the real victimhood of centuries past. Please stop creating new victims via the real victimhood of centuries past. So we're creating a mentality. A mentality. When Kanye says slavery was a choice, it's a mentality that we're talking about here. This victimhood mentality. I actually have a tweet called Infantilization Engine. Check it out on my Twitter, at RealJeffTidwell. But basically, we are framing them as victims. Now, if you look at the actual data, I can't speak today, home ownership isn't as high as it could be for African Americans. But we are in a position where unemployment is lower than it ever has been for the African American community. Now, you could call African American community, black community, however you'd like to phrase it. I just figure I'd go with that. We have Caucasian American, Asian American, Hispanic American, African American. So what we need to work on is opportunity. People need to have the opportunity to get ahead. And we've done a couple things. Such as affirmative action. Now, affirmative action, of course, is by definition racist. It is. It's altruistic racism. You're pointing to a specific race and, forget all the other races. You're going by race and saying, well, here, let's hire diversity hiring and things. Very altruistic, very egalitarian. And I actually support the idea, again, behind it. But of course, at a certain point, there will come a time when that group is no longer the oppressed under the modern religion that is social justice, and they have become, the oppressor. There is a time when people are no longer marginalized. So we do have to think about that. Like, what point, is this reparation package we're thinking of from the Democrats? Is it a one-time check? Are you just going to cut a check to people and erase all these years of discrimination and bigotry? Are we going to erase it with a check? And then other people will say, well, my family was marginalized for this reason. Do I get anything for that? So really, going back and relitigating the injustices of the past may have diminishing returns. It may be better, actually, to look towards the future and try to create a system that allows people, regardless of their immutable characteristics, their race, their sex, their gender, their ethnic background, their religious background, whatever occupation they might be in, whatever their creed, whatever their skin tone, whatever their background might be, we want to give as much opportunity and as equal opportunity as we can to those people. But, we have people like, Scott Adams has talked to Hawk Newsom of Black Lives Matter. And he says that it's really hard, reparations, brainstorming it. You can come up with all these ideas, but actually getting things passed is really hard. Getting them passed by Congress, getting them passed by lawmakers and legislatures. Hawk Newsom says he's the head of the New York chapter, one of the New York chapters of Black Lives Matter. Definitely check him out. I believe he's on Twitter. I think it's I am Hawk Newsom, but definitely check out Hawk. He's really a great guy. But he said that, we need to find reparations in a place where everybody benefits. Like, not just one ethnic community, or one, background, but everybody across that entire income bracket. It should be focused on income, because obviously there are African Americans that are billionaires. There are people that are very wealthy and successful that don't really need reparations. They haven't felt the impact of what some call systemic racism. They haven't felt that, or they've been able to overcome it. But we want to create a system that works for everybody, not just focused on a racist basis, on a racial basis, okay? Because at the end of the day, yeah, it is racist to point to, say, for example, everybody else and say, well, why don't you pay up for this other community over here? This racial community, these races pay for this race. That's breaking people down by their immutable characteristic of race, and then doing transactions based on that. That is how, of course, the social justice, the intersectionality, the identity politics of it all work. Okay, what they call cultural or social Marxism. I know that's how it works. You break people down into their groups, and you find the intersections of everything, and you determine who is oppressed and who's being the oppressor, who's marginalized, and who's being just a big bully. But he said, it would be better if everybody benefit. And that way, if everybody can benefit, it doesn't become about race anymore. It just becomes about class, which is really, and back, if you look at actual Marx's writings, people say, like, if you call it cultural Marxism, it's not really Marxism, they say, because of the collectivist, breaking people down into groups part. That's how, people use that as a springboard for calling it all Marxist. But if you go back, he talks about class, and we do need to give at least a way for those with less money and less, what they would call privilege, to get a leg up in the world. But, with the Democrats, it's just another wedge issue. It's just another way to get you in the door to vote for them, because they're saying, well, maybe we'll give you money. Maybe we'll give money to you. And, I say vote in your self-interest. So I would totally not begrudge anybody that, voted for a Democrat on the basis of getting reparations. If you told me I was going to be cut a check for what? Well, just for your skin color or just for your background. I don't know you. I don't know. Again, I haven't judged your character. I haven't judged your merit, Jeff. But, you are white, or you're male, or whatever immutable characteristic it might be. They're saying, well, we'll cut you a check. I'd say, sure. You're cutting all the men checks. Like, I wouldn't think twice. I would vote in my best interest. I would go with it. But of course, that's not really looking at the whole cost-benefit analysis. That's looking at the benefits and not thinking of the costs, not thinking of the precedent. I have a new video out. Let's talk about precedent. Check it out on BitChute and YouTube, where I talk about how, putting laws into effect, especially when they're really broad, wide-ranging laws and big laws, and the consequences of those, sometimes you can't easily pull them back if they're actually a bad idea. You need to test it small, not test it big. So I say here, put down the identity politics script for half a minute and quit trying to buy votes with this backwards thinking nonsense. Because you're looking at the past. You're telling people what it was like before. You're not telling them about the future. This is the funny thing about Democrats. Sometimes they think way ahead, they're very futurist, and then they turn around and they want you to focus on the injustices of 400 years ago. For me, it's all about how far do you want to go back? How far do you want to go back? Should I get reparations for how certain clans were treated thousands of years ago? How did that affect me? Should it be all re-litigated? See, if you re-litigate history going all the way back to the earliest era of civilization, the very beginning, the Genesis, if you litigate it going all the way back, you're just going to undo society. People have been killing each other, they've been taking from each other, they've been taking advantage of each other, they've been doing all these awful things, some beautiful things too, but really some awful things to each other for thousands and thousands of years. What matters is not what happened all those years ago. What matters is what's happening right now. And right now, people need jobs, and people need education. So I go with Scott Adams on this. Scott Adams had a point. The creator of Dilbert, by the way. He can be found on YouTube, Real Coffee with Scott Adams, and of course on Twitter he's at Scott Adams Says. He does have a lot of great things to say on the topic of reparations, but they say, like, education. If education can be fixed so that people of lower income brackets, which include a number of African Americans, of course, regardless of their family ties or where they're from, but if you do it for everybody, make education affordable and find a way to get people into the workforce, to lower the unemployment, to raise the employment rate. These are the ways forward for the African American and all other communities that may say marginalization. We've been marginalized. Well, what can we do for you now? We can cut you a check, or we can give you an ongoing benefit. Now, people that are in lower income brackets already do have an ongoing benefit called welfare. So we are already using social programs to help take care of people that can't as easily take care of themselves. We don't want that rung of society, that income bracket to fall off a cliff. We want them to be part of the big deal, the whole show, because you can't have parts of society that, like, right across the street are all the poor folks, and then there's the rich folks, and we all want to live together in harmony and love, right? It's hard. So we have to figure out something. But, creating the victimhood mentality, some people would call it, I think Scott calls it loser think. A number of people have philosophies on this, but I try to preach personal agency and this idea that, you don't want to frame yourself and see yourself as a victim to start. You want to have a high opinion of yourself, or a relatively, a healthy, not like high self-esteem. I do have a video out, You Are Not Your Ego, where I say you're not your ego. You shouldn't tie your identity to your ego too much. You're being right or wrong about different intellectual issues to your ego, because you can raise and lower your ego. You can bring it up here when you need to, and you can be more humble when you need to. It's part of, it's one of the tools in our tool set as human beings. But people that cast themselves as, handicapped, I'm not talking about actual disabled individuals, but people that say, well, look at me, I'm a victim. I'm being victimized. Well, there are people out there that have trouble getting into society and have issues with, they don't have much self-esteem, or they might feel or appear to be, weak. They might not have the same physical strength, the stature, but what this is all about, what this entire mindset of getting away from victimhood is, and victim mentality and infantilization, is being your own person and not listening to a political party that says, it's really actually, kind of racist when you think about it, that they say, you need us. You need us. And they've reached that point where it's like, they're saying, you need us more than we need you. Because, when you're talking about lower income people, right? Regardless of their race, color, sex, creed, anything, regardless, if you go with the other policy ideas from the Democrats, like, what they call open borders, which is actually not technically true. We don't actually have a closed border in the United States, but you know what I'm saying about, immigration, mass migration, paying for the health care of illegal immigrants, and so on and so forth. They're advocating for this sort of like, amnesty for all situation. How do you think that affects the economy? How do you think that affects those people that are having trouble finding work? Do you think it makes it easier? No, it doesn't make it easier. It makes it harder. Okay, we're not talking again, I try to stay away from framing everything as race. We are talking about reparations in the context of African Americans because that's what they are. But the reality is that there are millions and millions of people in this country that are struggling. And I don't want to draw attention away from the struggles of the African American community. They are dying in the inner cities. There's tons of crime. There's tons of issues. The schools, they need money. They need funding. We need to work on this. Like, I advocate for that. But there are people of all different ethnic backgrounds, all different immutable characteristics that are struggling. And nobody's talking about reparations for them because, well, reparations is a political talking point, a persuasion point designed to get the African American community to vote for them. That's what it is. It's as simple as that. Because, again, how are they going to achieve it? They talk about it. Again, they virtue signal. They're able to create this that's showing you just the benefit and saying, well, why wouldn't you support this? Jeff, I'm going to probably get a comment saying, Jeff, why don't you support reparations? Don't you care about these people? And I do care about them, but I don't want to put a Band-Aid on this problem. I see reparations as a Band-Aid. I want to create something bigger. And I want to actually hear from you as well. If you have any thoughts and comments, thoughts and observations, please comment below with your thoughts on reparations. But, it raises a lot of questions. How far do you go back? Who gets paid? And then you have to ask the people themselves, the people that could be the beneficiaries. And there are a number of people in the African American community that don't support reparations. So the question of reparations is a complicated one. It's a sensitive one. And it's not one that I intend to solve today, of course. But, anything we can do to talk about it is helpful. And I think that identity politics is tearing apart America. Okay, it's designed to divide. Identity politics is designed to divide. So the messaging, of course, is that, you're owed something. The people of today are privileged. They have benefited from hundreds of years of oppression. That's the narrative that they've created with their postmodern ideology known as social justice. Okay, and I'm not talking about social justice generally speaking. I'm referring to the specific collectivist ideology that encompasses intersectionality and intersectional feminism, and this whole system of we have an oppressor and we have an oppressed. And which group are you? Are you in the majority? Then you're in the oppressor group, okay? And that can change, of course. That changes dependent on the country you're in, the year that it is, so on and so forth. Again, complicated topic. But I do think education is extremely important. I do support funding for historically black colleges. I support finding ways for college to be more affordable for everybody. Everybody should have a way to get some kind of credential, some kind of, college level degree or college level credit, because that's what our job market requires. And if we're not helping people achieve those things, it can be hard. Now, someone might say, why don't we if you give them reparations, they can do all these things. Well, here's another question for you. Say if we do give reparations, right? Now, what happens after that? Is it if it's a one-time benefit? What if it doesn't work? Do you say, well, we gave you your reparations, now what? Now what do you want? What can we do? We already did the ultimate. It's the ultimate promise. It's the ultimate. I hate to call it this, but like a carrot. It's a carrot. They're putting this carrot on a stick and saying, if you vote for us, we'll give you money. We'll bring you up to. We'll erase all the privilege of every other group and give you this. It's a huge, huge ask, a huge, huge benefit. And they don't ever talk about the costs. They just talk about it. And of course, what's going to happen if people, get this benefit and it doesn't work? These people should look towards the future. Focusing on the past and saying, well, your family was once enslaved, again and again and again. A lot of people are rejecting that. They want to be in the big tent. They want to actually do the things that the privilege, that those that have money and status and class, higher class, upper class, middle class, they want to reach the middle class. They don't want to be looked at as political pawns. They don't want to be entrapped, They don't want, and I really shouldn't speak. I can't speak for any other group. I'm just looking at what I'm seeing online from all these different individual people. And not everybody's on board. People have questions. And so I say, there will be no repairing the damage done in paying reparations. Because once you start down that road of paying reparations to one group, other groups that feel marginalized are going to want it, and you're not going to be able to give it to them. You can't undo the injustice of the past. What you can do is learn from the past and change the way we're behaving in the present. And of course, people take issue with the affirmative action as well. They take issue with it. They don't want to be seen. People don't want to be seen as victims. They want to be seen as empowered. And again, I'm speaking generally. I know a lot of people will disagree and say, I like it. Like I said, it's in my best interest to get these things, to get these benefits. But I don't know. I figured it's worth mentioning that the Democrats have done this every other election. They do this, and it's just a ploy for votes. They're going to have to get it through Congress. They're going to have to get it. The American people are going to have to vote for it. And with so many people on all sides of this issue saying it's not a great idea, in fact, it's almost political suicide and poison to suggest it. Yeah, it's not going to work. But if you have any dissenting comments, please leave them below. We can certainly talk about this further. And I will continue on. So my next tweet here is going back, now that we're in February 2019, we can talk more about named tweets. Named tweets. So I have some tweets that are titled, and this one is kind of heavy, but we'll go right into it. And it's actually 3 tweets here, but they're all different versions of the same thing. Top 10. Topped 10. That's 10 that's been topped. And of course, based 10, which is the final version of it. So what I'll do is I will read based 10, this named tweet here. I'll go through the list and we will discuss each point, each sentence of it. So based 10. Number 1, memory is an illusion. Number 2, opinions can be assigned. Number 3, perfection is a fallacy. Number 4, truth is indeterminable. The other tweets had it saying, truth cannot be known, and the truth is unknowable. But the final version is, number 4, truth is indeterminable. Number 5, energy survives all outcomes. Number 6, time perception is relative. Number 7, love is the answer. Number 8, balance is the goal. Balance is the goal. Number 9, contradictions trick the mind. Number 10, complete? Okay, so like I said, heavy, brainy, heady, whatever you'd like to call it. But we'll go through and we'll talk about what I'm saying here. And if you have any thoughts on this, please leave a comment below, because it's got some interesting things. So number 1 says that memory is an illusion. And you might be saying to yourself, what do you mean memory is an illusion? I remember what happened. They remember what happened. We have a record of what happened. What do you mean memory is an illusion? Well, think about it. What do you really remember? What are memories in your head? A lot of times, memories are stored as images. You have an image of what happened in your head. But really, depending on your emotions, your state of mind, you might not have even recorded what happened to you accurately. It could be that you had been emotionally clouded. In fact, you were, obviously filtering everything through your sensory inputs, your emotions, your heart, and your mind while you're taking in information. So memory is an illusion. It doesn't really exist. It only exists because we can recall. But at the end of the day, memory is, we only think we have memory because we are looking at how we experienced it, how we experienced that moment. Do we record all the information? Do we record the information from that moment accurately? Or did we take it in our own way? We have a memory of what happened, but if you're in a traumatic situation, you might not even remember correctly. People have actually had reports of being robbed at the bank, like a bank teller was robbed, and they didn't remember the face of their attacker. They were so traumatized, their memory got completely scrambled. So they obviously saw the person, they had a memory of what happened, but their memory was false. False memories are very, very commonplace. So commonplace, in fact, that nobody can really quite exactly recall anything that happens. They have an approximation. They have an estimation of the memory. So memory, we can say like, okay, everything around, well, I remember this room. I'm in this room. There's physical objects that haven't moved in 50 years, 20 years. Of course, I remember that. Who wouldn't remember? Do you remember? I remember. But at the end of the day, electrical signals in the head, irrationally conceived through our shroud of emotion, memory is an illusion. Number 2, opinions can be assigned. And not only can they, but they're often assigned. In fact, almost always assigned. Because we think that we come to independent conclusions about things. We think that we have our own individual opinion, but how is that opinion informed? Right? How is it informed? Where did that information come from that helped us build our opinion? Are we turning, if I'm looking at especially when it comes to things like science, where you turn to subject matter experts, seek subject matter experts. Think about science. Are you a scientist? Or do you just turn to an expert and say, well, I believe what this person tells me? That person assigned your opinion. Your parents, your friends, everybody you've talked to, where you get your information from, they're assigning your opinion. In fact, if you're using self-hypnosis, you're telling yourself all these different things, that's also creating your opinion, but it's all informed by the outer world. You don't come to these conclusions independently. You're going off of other people that might have credit, they might have some merit, they might have some credentials, they have some kind of, what's the word? Clout. They have clout. But your news media, like you say, well, I'm a political junkie. You see people on Twitter say, I'm a political junkie. And of course, they turn around and they just, like an NPC, they just say what's said on the media, what their favorite newscaster or analyst or pundit said. They'll just repeat it verbatim. That's not your opinion. That's the opinion of the news. And that's what we all do. We all do that. This isn't targeted at anybody specifically. This is something that happens to everybody. Opinions get assigned. And of course, we all come to our conclusion, but again, it's not ever completely independent. It needs to be from somewhere. It needs to be based on something. And that's what I mean when I say opinions can be assigned. Perfection is a fallacy. That's number 3. Perfection is a fallacy. I've talked about this a bit. I have it in one of my more recent videos. It's got a long title, but it's something to the effect of politics, philosophy, epistemology, postmodernism, absolutism, and my advocacy. Check it out on BitChute and YouTube. I talk about the box. You make a box to create perfection. You need to have limited parameters to work within, because perfection, of course, is largely subjective. It's largely, people say, well, that's perfect. That was perfect. Well, it's perfect to your taste, my friend. It's perfect to my tastes. But in reality, perfection is a fallacy. There's no such thing as perfect until you reduce the options down and all the number of vectors, the number of variables down to a point where it's manageable. And then within a box, say, for example, a 10 by 10 box, 100 squares, if you can fill every one of those 100 squares with something positive, well, you've achieved within that limited frame something perfect. But in reality, there is no such thing as perfection because it's an opinion. Okay? For one thing, you have to create the box. You have to create an environment in which perfection is possible. And then you have to meet all the criteria of perfection. So perfection is a fallacy. I think trying to achieve perfection is a noble goal, but it's almost like achieving truth. It's like, again, I say the truth is unknowable, it's indeterminable. Perfection, unless you do have that tiny box, unless you really limit it, you can't reach it. You can't reach perfection. In fact, people talk about, being perfectly imperfect, the perfect contradiction. In art, actually, I believe the perfect contradiction is a very virtuous thing to strive for when you've crossed this, you're on the line of creation and destruction, and it's actually hard to describe, but you're on the line of creation and destruction, and you can move any way you'd like, and you're working so precisely within whatever, world, whatever artistic world you're in, whatever discipline you're working in. But perfection cannot be reached. It's unreachable because of all the issues that it's subjective. It requires certain things. You can't reach the perfect situation, especially not if you're human, because we are irrational beings, of course. There's more to that, but I think I covered most of the bases. Now on to number 4. Truth is indeterminable, or the truth is unknowable. So I talk about the truth being between both sides. When we're talking about like dualism and talking about, you have in politics, of course, you have the left and the right, or you have any two ends of a spectrum, of a continuum. Of course, neither are necessarily the truth. Things aren't ever completely zero or completely maxed out to 100. But that's, of course, talking about absolutism. The truth, of course, cannot be known within this realm of reality, because even if we're able to map out all of physics, quantum physics, we reduce all of our questions to virtually nothing. We've figured it all out. We've gotten to the singularity, right? But there's always a little more. There's death. What happens to our consciousness after death? It's unknowable. Nobody can become fully dead forever, come back and tell us what they found. They can't scout into the unknown, into the afterworld, the afterlife, and come back, it's unknowable. It can't be known. And once we figure out all these physics puzzles and the nature of reality itself, well, what if it turns out that it's just a simulation? It goes back to the axiom. What if it's just God? What if it's just God's garden? What if it's just a computer chip on some kid in an alternate dimension, some kid's Fisher-Price truck from 2 dimensions over? What if this entire universe is contained as a byproduct or something of his of the computer software, of the hardware? We don't know. We know what we can see. We know what we can observe, but we don't know everything. We can't know everything. So the truth, the absolute truth, is unknowable. We can only do so much. We can only see what we get through empirical evidence, through the scientific method. We can't do it all. So that's what I mean by that. Truth cannot be known. There's always another question. There's always the axiom. There's the why. There's the how. And people often answer that with the axiom of God. They just say, oh, Allah did it. At the end of the day, it's all, and I think some people actually do hold this opinion that we are, our existence here on earth is just sort of like God's imagination or God's mind. There's different ways that people interpret our spiritual nature, spirituality. But yeah. So number 5 is energy survives all outcomes. This also changed. Originally it was energy survives both outcomes, meaning negative and positive. But I decided to go with all in the based 10 tweet. Energy survives all outcomes. So no matter what happens, whether you have a positive result or a negative result, energy is released. May it be positive energy or negative energy. So no matter what happens, there's a continuing energy that pushes along. If you do something wrong and you get negative energy out of it, that energy translates to what happens next. It informs what happens next. If you get positive energy, again, it informs what happens next. So that's what I'm talking about here, where either way, no matter what happens in this galaxy, in this universe, in this reality, energy will survive the outcome. You also have in the world of, astronomy and astrophysics and all this stuff, you have, of course, dark energy. And I don't want to get into that because I'm actually not an expert. Seek subject matter experts and leave me a comment about dark energy and dark matter below. But energy survives all outcomes. So no matter what you do, there will be some kind of residual effect. There will be some consequence. Every action that happens, there is something that comes out of it. Now, it might be negative energy, and that might be a setback to some, but others might thrive on negative energy. I've talked about this a little bit recently. Some might thrive and some might not, but either way, energy survives. And it's up to you how you handle that energy. Number 6, time perception is relative. So, of course, we all know this. Well, the older you get, the more you know it. The fact is, when you get older, time feels like it's passing quicker. It feels like it's passing quicker when you're having fun. They say time flies when you're having fun. Yeah. Your perception of time depends on the actions your brain is taking, what's going on, the computations that are happening, how much energy is being expended, and of course, experience. Like how, when you get older, you've already been through the whole routine, so it seems there's all these different ways that time seems to pass differently. If you're using recreational drugs or medicinals or whatever it might be you're using, I don't, of course, recommend using recreational drugs. I'm just using this as a point. Don't take any medical advice from YouTubers. But of course, your perception of time changes in a little bit when you're on, say, for example, marijuana. You might listen to music and it might come out sounding a little bit, you're more relaxed, so it might seem like it's slower, or depending on which drug you're taking, it might seem like it's faster. It's all relative to your experience, to your perception, all relative to you. Time always moves at the same speed. Now, of course, somebody that's a physicist or someone that has a background can actually maybe correct me on that, because I know that if you've ever seen that movie Interstellar, the Christopher Nolan directed film with Matthew McConaughey, see, I can say that, but not spirituality. They talk about how, like, depending on gravity, time, your perception of time and time itself can change depending on gravity. So there's that as well. But of course, our perception of time is also relative, to add more complication to that. So definitely seek, again, subject matter experts on that. But I did want to throw that in there. Number 7, love is the answer. Because we know hate isn't the answer, right? Like, we want love, positivity. We don't want hate, negativity. When you only look towards the negative, when you only look towards when you look towards hate and negativity, when you look inward, only inward, and you get to this sort of zero-sum game, that isn't very productive to staying positive, to staying healthy mentally. Like, you need other people in your life, right? If you don't have other people in your life, there was a great movie, I believe, I forget which country it's from. It's from an Eastern European country. It's in another language. It might be Bulgaria, but it's called The Wall. Check it out, The Wall. It's like 2012. Not Pink Floyd's The Wall, also a good movie. But this woman, I won't spoil the movie, but this woman is isolated in a cabin, and she has nobody to talk to. So she writes, and she ends up sort of talking to herself by writing it down, and she actually has, she doesn't know if anybody will ever read what she has to say, but she's writing it. And what happens over the course of the film, she's in isolation in the mountains, is that her pets become almost like human beings to her. Like, of course we do love our pets. I have 2 cats and I love them, but I don't look at them as human. I see them as, they're animals, and I take care of them and they're cute. But she actually put a real personality on the animals, and felt extreme pain and sorrow when they, I don't want to spoil the film, but bad things happen in the film. And, love is the answer, because it's what we strive for, and it doesn't have to be romantic love. It doesn't have to be spiritual love. Love is representative of everything that we hold dear, things that give us positive energy. Okay, hate is negative, usually negative energy. And it can be directed in positive ways. It can be used, and negative energy isn't necessarily, evil or wrong. It can be directed for positive use. But love is the answer. We would never say hate is the answer. Love is the answer. 11-11, whatever you want to say. And of course, after love, once you realize that love is the answer, number 8, balance is the goal. This is one of the most important of the based 10 statements, because no matter what happens, you don't want to have too much. The question is always enough. Do I have enough love? Is there enough hate to balance it out? Because people are always looking. We might try to say that we're good people. We're good people. I'm not doing a moral judgment here, but we'll say all these things. At the end of the day, though, we are just finding an outlet for our aggression, for our irrational human hatred. We're always looking for an outlet. May it be shooting things up in a video game. That's a violent example. It might be going to the gym. It might be working out those muscles. Get the aggression out. Get all that negative energy that you're pounded into the boxing, your boxing mats and things like that. Your, what do they call it? A little short on words today. But no, people have all these different ways of managing their love and their hate. If someone loves another person and all they do is pour their adoration, all they do is every day, I love you, I love you, I love you, it's too much. It's more than enough. It's like the feeling is good, the sentiment, the intentions are always good with these things. Just like with reparations. It's like it might be a little bit racist, but it's at least it's altruistic. It's egalitarian. It's trying to help. It's good-hearted. It's good-intentioned. But balance is the goal. You can't just pour your love into something endlessly. There has to be a counterbalance. Otherwise, you can't even define the other thing. You can't define the good thing if you don't have the bad thing. You need to have both to have the complete picture. There is no light without dark. So there has to be a balance. There has to be something that works for you and works for everybody. Works for everybody and everything involved. And it needs to be, it's about balance. It's about achieving a little bit of this, a little bit of that, getting everything lined up, and then right in the middle, you're balancing the whole thing, and it's going well, and you're maintaining, and you're getting from point A, birth, to point B, death, just fine. Love, hate, everything in between. You know, we redirect hate. We redirect hate. It's part of the modern religion of social justice, by the way. Redirecting hate. You just say, well, things are happening. There's been injustices here. People are not getting what they need. Why don't we create a villain? We'll call them the oppressor. And, well, how do we judge that? Immutable characteristics. Things that people can't change. We will say that they are easy, they're okay to hate. They're okay to, oppression essentially is hatred, right? So if they're projecting hatred, well, it's totally cool. It's totally validated. I'm totally validated to direct my hatred towards them, right? So I say that, intersectionality just redirects hate, and it points it to people in an irrational way. Of course, that's why I call it a modern religion. You got faith and you got reason, and sometimes faith overtakes reason. But that's another topic. Balance is the goal. You want balance. As much as you want love, can't have too much, right? You gotta have a balanced amount. It makes you happy. Contradictions trick the mind. Yes, they do. I talk about limiting information and stacking contradictions in order to, basically be a sophist, to control people, to get them to do what you want, to socially engineer them, to push them in different directions. You give them only so much information, and then you stack contradictions. You stack things that don't make sense, that sound right, but on the surface, and there's also this idea that people can look at something that isn't a contradiction and say, oh, well, if you disagree that this is a contradiction, it's cognitive dissonance on your part. And they're like, we all have our own way of looking at it. But contradictions trick the mind. It's important to note that you say something contradictory, and depending on who's saying it, some people might just take it on their word. But then you stack another contradiction on top of that, and then you stack another one. Actually, Matt Walsh had a really good one about the transgender community, and just the way that, I support, of course, the transgender community, but just the way that they've handled their public relations. And he actually has a great tweet on that. I don't remember it offhand, and I know I'll probably stoked some interest by going there. But contradictions trick the mind, It's how it's how we get easily confused. It's how, especially like one contradictions is one thing. It can be sort of like, well, how this doesn't work. This doesn't make logical sense. But then you keep on stacking more and more on the same topic, and eventually it's sort of like your brain, my brain, just shuts down and says, I can't do this. I can't do this. And then I finally say, complete. Number 10, complete. Is it complete? You let me know in the comments below. These are just, they're just statements. They're just statements that hold, in my mind, truth. I think that they're true statements for the most part. But, of course, as with all things, perfection, they are not perfect. Number 3, perfection is a fallacy. So they could be changed. They could get better. But I felt it was a good idea to air these on Twitter and, of course, air them in person here on the video as well. Just to get you thinking. Just to get you thinking and to talk it through myself so that I can get better at what I'm doing. Okay. So let's move on to something on customer service. On customer service, I posted this to Facebook originally, but I'll read it here. To be honest, I believe customer service has one of the strongest futures of any career path in this country and elsewhere. Long term, notably, into the automation age. Personality, persuasion, people skills, these are an area technology will be lacking in. That said, I've read stories. Customer service is currently one of the most grueling job experiences. Respect all people, especially those who strive to make your day more enjoyable. Whether a natural inclination of theirs or part of the job. So it's true, I do believe that customer service has a big future going into the 21st century, notably the automation age. Because at the end of the day, we have so many things that are automated, so many machines doing things for us, right? But I think that people still desire, notably with like the telephone and all these really impersonal electronic, like automated devices, there are some things that you don't want to talk to a person. You want to have, especially if you're an introvert, you want to have, and again, there's myths about extroverts and introverts and ambiverts, where they say, like, oh, introvert doesn't mean that you don't like to talk to people, but it means you have less social energy. You don't derive as much energy from social interaction as an extrovert who does. But yeah, like some people just don't want to be talking to anybody at a given time. We've all had that moment where we want to do our own thing, read a book, just take it easy. Don't have to please anybody or present ourselves for people. Like we do that all week at work. We present ourselves, we get dressed up nice, we have to be nice and courteous and maybe even funny. But then we want to have some time for ourselves. But customer service, I think, will always have a great value because the personal touch, the human touch, I don't think any machine can quite replicate that. I think that we have something that can never be replicated by AI, as good as it gets. Like as good as it gets, and believe me, I'm waiting for the uncanny valley to be crossed, and people to have an experience where I think it's a real person talking to me, but it's AI. I'm waiting for that. But the thing is that making AI, making computers that are so imperfect, they're so, I almost want to say stupid. They're as stupid as us, human beings. To make that is going to be really difficult while also getting the job done. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe a computer programmer can correct me on that. But customer service will always have value. People will want to see real actors. They'll want to deal with real people on the phone. They'll want to hear a real voice. They'll want to make jokes. They'll want it to be a little awkward, but not too much. I think people will continue to want this. Now, people will sound projecting or something, but I think that this is what most people are looking for. Most people are not going, well, I can't wait for the day when everybody I talk to is Siri. I could say it, hey Siri. She didn't hear me. But no, I think people seek a mirror of themselves. They're looking for somebody like them. And so, of course, a human being fits that mold much better than a machine. So there's always going to be a market for it. And there's more and more people, too. Like, we have more and more people. There's going to be these jobs available. They don't require that much technical expertise. They're going to be available. Okay? And like, once it gets to a point where we have, like, almost everything automated, it's going to be about interfaces. It's going to be about, tech support. And, again, customer service will be paramount. And I think that it's going to be important. It'll have one of the strongest futures of any career path in this country, United States, and elsewhere, long term. Because you're talking, again, about personality. Your automated machine might do the job, but it doesn't have personality. It doesn't give us any kind of warm feeling like we had a successful interaction with another human being. The level of articulation, the level of abstraction that a human can handle, that a machine might not be able to. Yet, again, all these things, like I am a futurist, I do know that all these things will be probably solved by a certain point. But persuasion, a machine only again, I think Scott Adams would actually disagree with me on this. He'd say, like, well, if we can think it, then a computer can. If we can imagine it, then we can code it. And that's probably true. He's probably right. At the end of the day, it's probably possible to code a computer that's as friendly and conversational and nice as a human being. I just don't think that it's such a big market that everybody would be, like, cast aside by machines. Like, there's going to be, when everything is being handled by, people that don't code. If you don't learn to code, as I haven't, there's going to be fewer jobs out there in the future. There's going to be, it's going to be harder to get jobs once more and more. Machines are there to do manual labor. It's going to be harder. And so it will be all about it will all be about the touch point, the interaction between you, the customer, and the service. And if you have a person there that's delivering the service to you, I prefer that. I actually spoke with my brother the other day, and he said, well, I kind of prefer the machine. For different applications, I would say that that's the case. But I think it gives me personally, it gives me dopamine. It gives me happiness chemicals to talk to other people. So I think that there's going to be a lot of this in the future. People's skills are going to be valuable, very valuable. And of course, I talked about the context of entertainment. So you're going to be watching, right now you're watching a YouTube video by a relatively new YouTuber. Like, I've only been making videos since about January 2019, right? But you're getting this from me. You're not getting it from some, machine reading a script or reading articles. And there are videos like that out there, of course, of people, machines just reading off articles in a Siri voice or whatever kind of computer voice you like, Cortana. But personality sells. Personality is a product. Entertainment is a product. So I think that it's going to last well into the, through the rest of the information age, into the golden age, as some call it. And whatever happens through the rest of the 21st century, people are going to be making content, making jokes, making all kinds of stuff. I think that people are going to be the product. People are going to be the product. Everything will be taken care of in terms of the technology, but then you'll have people that are at the front of it and that guide the experience so that it's personal, it's more social. But of course, because technology can't match the personality of a human. But of course, there are stories about how customer service is bad. So if you read on Reddit, you have places like R Tales from Retail, or R Rants from Retail, Tales from Customer Service, Tales from Tech Support. Yeah, people abuse the shit out of service people, servers, waitresses, waiters. People abuse tech support. People abuse customer service reps, especially if you work at a big box store. You're getting abused fairly often by customers that want discounts, and if you can't give them the discount, they get mad. I mean, I've read literally hundreds of stories on this, and I've seen it. I've seen how rude people are to servers, the wait staff. They don't tip. There's all these different things that happen. So it's a very grueling experience. And that's probably not going to change because people are not always rational. We are rational beings, and they're not always kind. They're not always nice. They're often quite mean. It's just the nature of humanity. So I say here as a closing, I say respect all people, especially those who strive to make your day more enjoyable. Whether it's a natural inclination of theirs, if they get actual serotonin, happiness chemicals, dopamine, or there's another really important one. As long as they're not getting cortisol from it, they're enjoying it. They might do that. They might receive a benefit from the way they're talking to you, or it might just be part of their job. They might just be doing it as part of their job. Either way, you should be nice and respect people that are serving you, because they're often, again, making a lot less money. And the reason why I think, of course, we talk about automation here, there's going to be fewer jobs for people. And customer service doesn't pay that much. It doesn't. Usually it doesn't pay that much. But I'm saying in the future, there's just going to be fewer jobs in general. And there's going to be more of a desire for people to have content. I think, I really wish YouTube would stop their verification stuff there, whatever they've been doing. They went through all those Vox adpocalypses after the cry bully Carlos Maza from Vox did his thing. He used to work for Media Matters, and then he went to Vox, doesn't work there anymore. But there were a bunch of adpocalypses, and YouTube, which used to be about like the people, used to be about like selling people's personalities, well, for free. I use YouTube Premium, but people were, putting themselves online and sharing. And I think that's large. Like having a big personality and being very persuasive is going to help people going forward into this highly technologically advanced age of the 21st century. It'll up the value of those individuals. So. 2 more tweets for you today. I'm just reading. Reading some of the replies to my base 10 and top 10 tweets. But they're a little out of context, and we actually passed through there, so I won't go back to that today, maybe in the future. So this is kind of a fun tweet here. And it goes in 2 parts. So a number of my tweets, the name tweets especially, not so much lately, but for a time, and it's always an option. It's always on the table. They might have 2 or more versions. Just me editing or refining or maybe giving a slightly different angle on the same general concept or idea. Because my name tweets are, they're usually high concept. They're usually tying a lot of things together. And then they have a name, so that also kind of influences like how you perceive it. And sometimes, different names can give a different image, different frame, a different memory of what the tweet was trying to say. So I have a tweet here called Private Parts. Private Parts. It has a sister tweet called Drama Clubbed. Drama Clubbed. So I'll read both and then we will break it down. Private Parts. Has the extensive, accelerating erosion of privacy in America and other high-tech free market countries facilitated the increasingly theatrical nature of politics, business, and science? Perhaps we're becoming desensitized to blackmail, corruption, and adultery. And I continue on here with another tweet. It's the same tweet, essentially, but it's a little different. It's called Drama Clubbed. Drama Clubbed. Does the extensive, accelerating erosion of privacy in the USA and other high-technology countries help? Does the accelerating erosion of privacy help to facilitate the ever-theatrical nature of politics, business, and science? Perhaps we've adapted to a stage of exhibition, blackmail, adultery, and corruption. So if you live in America and if you are involved in the technological world, the online world of Facebook and Twitter and all these different places, you might be involved in PayPal, or you might have an Amazon account. You might have all these different things. These people, these companies have a lot of your data, your metadata. Your privacy is no longer, like, especially now that we know the NSA spies, and through Apple phones you can get it, and Google with their Android. Privacy has become a true commodity that's almost very, very, very difficult to get as we keep on going further and further into the information age. So I say here, of course, does the erosion of privacy facilitate the theatrics of politics, business, and science? Because in the world of political theater, of course, I say politics is a post-truth realm. In the realm of political theater, and then you have business theater as well. You have business theater and scientific theater. Because the scientists, a lot of times, again, we are going by what scientists say. We are not able to actually judge the merits of their claims based on evidence, because the evidence is above our understanding. It's above, if we're not scientists ourselves, we will not be able to dissect and explain what they're saying. So it becomes more theatrical. And so it's natural when you have things like the climate strike, the climate change, I call it the modern religion of global warming, when people take political, when it becomes politicized, people take sides on the scientific issue based on the theatrics, the politics of it all. They take sides based on the politics. If you're a Democrat, well, you probably believe in climate change. If you're a Republican, you, well, probably don't. And what I'm saying with that is, I'm not saying Republicans don't believe the climate changes or anything else, the inverse, whatever it might be. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that, like, there is this world of, climate skepticism, where people look at the situation and go, well, yeah, the climate changes, but are we destroying the world, or do we need to put on this high level? Do we need to turn up the environmentalism to 10 right now, or otherwise it's too late? That's people that are skeptics are asking those questions. Alarmists, which are, of course, the Democrats. I know I switched sides here as left, right? The Democrats, of course, they're the alarmists. They're using this as a political wedge issue to control people, just like reparations, to control people. They're using children. They're abusing children. And they're brainwashing our kids. Of course, we are being brainwashed every minute of every day by ourselves, our family, our friends, the media, and others. Of course, I talked about how we get our opinions assigned earlier in the video. But, basically you have these two schools of thought. And the scientists there are scientists that believe that it's a big issue, and there are ones that don't. So it's not like it's like anti-intellectual to be a climate skeptic. But that's how it's presented. You know, usually they say you're anti-science. You're anti-science if you don't believe in catastrophic anthropogenic global warming, where we have such a big ego, we think that we are, as mankind, humankind, responsible for all this stuff. Whereas the evidence doesn't really show that quite. If you look at the actual rate of CO2 and where it was, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, there's not really much evidence for that. But again, do your research. Definitely do your research on that. So I say, we are losing our privacy, and I think it's almost like nobody cares anymore. It's like it doesn't matter now. We don't have our privacy, so it's all theater. It doesn't matter anymore. We just go with what feels good, what looks good, because we don't really have the control to pull back and escape the the erosion, the loss of our privacy. It's over. The game's already over. Like, we've lost it. If you're using Google, if you're using Facebook, like, they have all this information on you. They have metadata. They have all these ways. And Apple, they have your healthcare data. Facebook wanted your healthcare data. This is a different level. We're on a different level now, where it's all theatrical. It's all like, we're not at the low level, the low level of machine coding in the programming world. You know what I'm talking about. We're now at these high level applications that just do it theatrically. They do the big they do the big movements. They don't do the little precise things that have to happen, but it's just these large movements, these big movements. I know that's very ineloquent, but that's one way to frame that. So we're becoming desensitized to blackmail because we can be so easily blackmailed that it's like, oh, someone got blackmailed, politician. Like, if you got a copy of any of our chats, any of our emails, any of our instant messages, texts, anything, you could easily, end somebody's career and end somebody's marriage if you did it right. They wouldn't even have to do anything wrong. You could just frame it a certain way, and all of a sudden, you could be blackmailed into doing things. There's corruption, adultery. Like, there's so much corruption everywhere, all sides, in politics and science and business. There's so much corruption going on that it's kind of accepted. So we're just like, oh yeah, adultery. Of course, those with power, absolute power, corrupts absolutely, and that includes your moral core. It can get corrupted just like a computer. We talked a lot about AI and replacing people with machines. Well, we're already corruptible. There's already bit rot in some of the moral cores of people. So, yeah, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek. Exhibition, blackmail, adultery, and corruption. We're just desensitized. We've adapted to the stage in Drama Club. I say it's a stage. I frame it that way. Because with no privacy, we just feel like, well, what else are we going to do? It's theatrical. It's all a show. It's more about the show than the actual nuts and bolts of what's happening. We know that people speak directionally, and there's hyperbole, and politics is post-truth, and then people take a postmodern frame, like in this video. So perhaps we have. We're used to it. We've gotten used to it. One more tweet for you today. It's getting a little dark out there, but we'll try to get one more in before the sun goes completely down. It's about 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 22nd of September, Sunday. So I'll make this one quick. I'll do it a little faster. I think my first tweet took about 30 minutes. I'll just throw this in there. There is a video out there called Terms Scented with Kale Vapor. One of the tweets I'm looking at here is that very tweet. Alt-right fascist, conspiracy theory, apologist, gaslighting, and offended alt-right fascist. You're an alt-right fascist. That's the idea. So check it out. Term Scented with Kale Vapor. That's on BitChute and YouTube. I have a couple of really great tweets here that I'll save for next time because they involve a lot of speaking. Yashar Ali. It's a cool person. They work at HuffPo, and I retweeted them a couple times here. A lot of fun tweets here, but I'd like to end the video. So you know what? I will. Thank you for sticking around these last few minutes as I searched for tweets and did not find them. But it is getting dark, and that takes precedence. So, as I always say, everything I said tonight might be wrong. Or, everything I said tonight might be right. Or, perhaps some of it was right and some of it was wrong. That's probably the closer to the truth, which again is indeterminable. So again, thank you very much for watching. I'm at Real Jeff Tidwell on Twitter. I'm also on Gab, Minds, Parler, Telegram, Instagram. If you're not watching this on YouTube, you're watching it on BitChute. Please do like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. If you don't enjoy the content, do hit the downvote button. It'll hurt me with the algorithm, but it'll help me with meritocracy. Okay? And of course, hit the little bell for notifications and leave me a comment below with your thoughts, observations, accolades, criticisms, derisions, and of course, anything nice you'd like to say, because I do enjoy that. I am human after all. And I guess that's all we have for today. So thank you again for watching, and I hope you have a great night.